Hola, buenas.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for sharing this time with us, and thank you to Fundación Telefónica for hosting us here today. My name is María Fasce. I am the literary director of Alfaguara Publishers, and I am the editor of Ottessa Moshfegh since the first novel that we published in 2017. Mi nombre era Eileen, or Eileen in English, which is a very moving novel, as all of the works by Ms. Moshfegh. Eileen will be on the screens very soon, starred by Anne Hathaway. This is a novel that earned the prize Ben Hemingway for the best debut novel, and it was also shortlisted for the Man Booker. And this was the first novel that we published in Spanish, and after that, an icon novel came after that, My Year of Rest and Relaxation, that we published in 2019, and also we published Death in Her Hands, which is a collection of short tales, and also La Pvona in 2023, 10 years after the first publishing in English. We have here McGlue. It's her first work. She was telling us that she wrote this novella long before 2014, the year in which it was published, and when we read it today, it looks like a real compilation of everything that Moshfegh embodies in her work. The New York Times, they say that Ottessa Moshfegh is the most interesting writer or novelist of our time. And I do believe that she is the most influencing novelist in the new writers. She has given me the most wonderful manuscripts, and those manuscripts that I received today are also very much inspired in her work. Those of you who have read her work already know this, and she is one of the brilliant writers that have been influenced by Ottessa Moshfegh. Is Virginia Feito. She is a Spanish writer, but she is writing in English. We published her book, we published her first novel in 2022. The critics have called her the Patricia Highsmith of Spain, and she told me that the inspiration for Miss March was definitely McGlue. So I cannot think of any better person to chat today with Ottessa Moshfegh than her. So this is Ottessa's first visit to Spain, and it is a great gift to all of us. I hope that you all enjoy this meeting, and at the end of this meeting, she will be signing books for you.
Okay. Hi. Okay. So I'm going to talk in English, by the way. Sorry if that's an inconvenience to anybody. I'd like to start by thanking María Fasce, my editor here at Penguin, who made this possible after I cried to her no less than 50,000 times. So, and thank you to Espacio Fundación Telefónica for hosting us, and to everyone for coming. I'm extremely honored to be here with one of my favorite writers ever. I'm also very afraid because Otessa is intimidating, but I've taken some bromazepam, so I think I'm going to be okay.
She also gave me some, but I haven't taken it yet.
I wasn't going to tell the story if you didn't consent, but I did give Ottessa Moshfegh some pills, so I hope I haven't killed her. So Otessa, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Spain.
Thank you.
How surreal is Spain seeming to you right now? Just
not surreal.
Not surreal.
I don't see anything surreal here yet.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, because this is such a fever dream of a novella, of a story. I just wonder if it was speaking to your current jet-lagged state.
I see what
maybe
you're getting
you've
at.
Murdered someone in a haze of flamenco and croquetas, or
no, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So, well, and actually, I know this novel defies categorization, as I think all of your stories and novels do. But do you think it's fair to say it's like a fever dream
I think so.
literary
I mean, I think it's
tradition?
also a little bit of, I mean, fever dream, maybe, but it's also like, what is that thing called? Encephalitis?
That's a thing.
Or brain damage
Ah.
is another way of putting it.
Is there a literary tradition of like brain damage novels?
Well, I think that there are probably a lot of writers who were brain damaged.
Right.
But
Right.
I don't know. their
Okay.
names.
Yeah, I was thinking more of like maybe like the yellow wallpaper.
Oh, yeah. I referred to that earlier today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And like Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin.
Which I haven't read.
I think you should.
Okay.
Okay. So McGlue was inspired by a brief article in a New England periodical. Can you tell us a little bit about this genesis of McGlue and like why you felt you had to write that particular story? I don't know if there were other stories within the same periodical that maybe caught your eye, or if you were like actively looking in periodicals or in magazines or in newspapers, or like just how did it happen? Why that story?
Well, I had just moved to Providence, Rhode Island. I was just beginning my graduate school program there, and I didn't, nor do I now really, have many friends. So between classes, I would just go to the library, and because I'm me, figured out that I really enjoyed reading through periodicals from New England from 1851.
51 specifically.
Well, yeah, there was, I mean, because history changed after that. There was Civil War, a lot of other things happened, culture shifted, but like 1851 was a good year for weird newspapering. I read articles about, random crimes. I looked at, they would publish like long columns just listing what was in a boat.
That's so useful.
It ended up being, and so this was just something that I was just like, okay, for some reason I like this. I'm going to keep doing this. I want to. And then one day I saw McGlue, and that was the title of this very short announcement. And in the inch or 3 centimeters below it, told McGlue's entire saga in this insane run-on sentence, which was something like, Mr. McGlue has been acquitted on the count of murder of Mr. Johnson in the port of Zanzibar, having been found that he was insane at the time of the crime because he had jumped off a moving train 3 months prior and was in a blackout, drunken state when he committed murder.
That's detailed.
It also said that he was from Salem, Massachusetts, my home state, and that he was a sailor.
Yeah, and actually, now that you say that, I wanted to ask, because there are so many places that are mentioned in McGlue, and it starts in Zanzibar, and it just goes everywhere. And do you feel like you have to go to these places yourself to write about them? Are you that kind of writer? Do you think it's unnecessary? Is there like any shame for a writer who like writes about a place they've never been to?
No, certainly not.
Okay. Oh, thank God, because I've done it. Okay.
No. And I had been to Salem.
Okay.
But my memory was like just like stupid memories of some, 4th grade school field trip where we visited the House of Seven Gables, and I didn't understand what it was, and then went to like the Witch Museum where you just walked around in the basement, and at some point someone was like, "Rah!" and you freaked out. But what Salem is really known for is this incredible thing that happened, I think it was the 1600s. Don't quote me. This is how bad I am at history.
I mean, so far you're doing really quite well.
Yeah. Thanks. There was a very strange phenomenon that happened in Salem, which I'm pretty sure it was just a bunch of teenage girls who like didn't want to do whatever they were supposed to do. So they pretended that they were like being controlled by some older women that they hated, and convicted them of being witches. And then they were put on trial. And it's very hard to prove that you're not a witch if everyone thinks you are a witch. So Salem has this strange history attached to it. And like a lot of New England, it has also retained a lot of its history because we're very proud colonials. And the past and this idea of the paranormal or the spirit was sort of just circling around when I read McGlue was from Salem.
Right. They're great transcripts, by the way, the Salem witch trial transcripts, in a way, with Tituba and Goody Proctor, and
it's an amazing story.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. Sometimes I'm like, maybe they made it up. So, like the moon landing. No, I'm kidding. And what about, like, okay, we're talking a lot about history, and I would not define this as a historical novel, by the way, but it is, it is set in the past. I wonder, in your writing process, how obsessed did you get with the historical accuracy of the thing? Were you like, did it get to a point where you would like, you'd write a line and then you'd feel like, I gotta go research if like there really were these kinds of like belt buckles at this time, like in this year, in this month? Like, how far did you go with that?
I'll tell you this, like, I kept on reading those newspapers. So they became kind of like a lifeline. And I also developed this wonderful illusion that happens a lot when you're writing a novel, which is that everything that happens in your life is about what you need to do in your novel. So, I would follow my instincts in my research. I also like signed up for a course about the China trade because I wanted to understand how ships moved from one place to another. I lasted like 2 classes and then I dropped it. But I did get a lot of the texts from the class.
Right.
And like rubbed those all over my body. There were certain things that I needed to know specifically. For example, in this book, we open, there are no spoilers here. Like, McGlue has killed this guy. His name was Mr. Johnson. And the book opens with him coming to, waking up out of his drunken blackout, lying on the, cobblestones of the port of Zanzibar, and someone's calling his name. And he's drunk, and like he will proceed to be throughout the rest of the book, kind of like cool with not really needing to take responsibility for anything. They put him in the hold of the ship as a prisoner, know that they need to bring him home to try him for this murder. And it turns out that the guy that he's murdered is actually like a very, 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 very dear friend, the dearest of friends. And over the course of the rest of this book, McGlue is trying to first deny that he has killed Mr. Johnson, understand that Mr. Johnson is actually dead, and then kind of come to terms with the fact that he was the one who killed him, and then recognizing why. So
it's a why done it.
It's a why did I do it?
Yeah, it's a mystery, so perhaps. It's so interesting what you were mentioning about how you were in fact doing a lot of research and imbuing yourself in the whole history. I wonder do you remember what like movies you were watching or books you were reading, or are you one of those writers who needs to like drown in like, that kind of to get into like the McGlue mood or the McGlue voice with a certain kind of list that you've created? I don't know, similar movies or books, or are you a writer who's prefers to like shut all of that off until you've like vomited up like your very pure, like essentially you draft?
Well,
or both, or none.
You make the first one sound so bad. So.
Oh no, really? Maybe it's because I did it. But
no, I don't think. I mean, I don't remember looking specifically for movies set in Massachusetts in the mid 1900s. But I remember that there was a film that came out about New York City around that same time. It's like a really famous movie with Leonardo DiCaprio about the 5 Points, which was sort of like this, what is now downtown Manhattan. And it's sort of about the history of the city and the rise of the police force out of the mob.
Is this Gangs of New York?
Gangs of New York.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
I remember watching that at some point and then remembering the movie.
Right.
And then because the story that McGlue is telling us, it's in his point of view, takes us back to the moment he meets Johnson and their adventures together up until Johnson's death. One of the places they go is Manhattan. So I did do a bunch of research on, what was it like to be in New York City, because none of these buildings were built, and I found out a lot of interesting things about a city that I had lived in for 10 years and didn't know.
Right. I've read that you've described the process of writing this book as something akin to a possession.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt similarly possessed since, with a character or a voice, or?
I'm not sure. It hasn't happened, but it definitely hasn't happened the way that it happened with McGlue.
As visceral, you mean?
It just felt really literal.
Right.
Like it was literally happening. There were things. Here's a good example. Well, this is kind of a spoiler, but I'll tell you if you promise to read the book. No, I'm just joking.
Please still read the book.
I actually don't need to reveal the answer to the question I'm about to ask myself. When I was living in Rhode Island, I happened to meet a woman who told me that she was a psychic of the body. And she could touch you and she would get images of your life or of your future, or understand certain things about yourself that your body was sort of holding privately from the mind that was scared to hear it.
Oh, wow.
So I was seeing her maybe once a month, and I remember being very close to the end of writing this book, approaching the moment where McGlue had, confessed to himself, at least, that yes, he did murder Mr. Johnson. But I was I don't understand why. I literally did not know. Suddenly I was how could I have gotten this far in this novel and not understood their relationship? And I went to this woman's house. I started telling her about the situation I was in my fiction. And she pointed at me and she said, "Did you notice that you're wearing a sailor jacket?" I was no, but I've been wearing this. I just had no, it was not only was I wearing a sailor coat, I was wearing a striped mariner shirt.
Wow, you really went for it.
I didn't realize it. I was oh, that's so embarrassing. Anyway, and she said, "Okay, well, hop up on this table. I'll touch you and I'll let you know if anything comes through, okay? This is, when you're a writer, you'll do anything."
Yeah.
And, she told me some other stuff, and then finally she was oh, okay. And then she was "Honey, what do you think McGlue feels about Johnson?" was like, I don't know, he like really likes him a lot. It did not occur to me at all what the truth of their bond and their secret attraction was.
Interesting.
Until she told me.
Pointed it out. I really need her number.
Well, she lives in Providence, and you're going to have to go there because she has to touch you.
I will go to be touched. Okay. Well, this is incredible. And so the voice, you might not have been possessed in this way exactly with the rest of your work, but I have read and heard you speak at interviews about how you find the voice, which is very common, I think, to any writer. Like you have to find the voice. But I'm wondering, does it always like come to you? I mean, are you ever stuck wondering, like, is this a man or a woman, or is this, I don't know, is this past or present? Is this first person or third person? Like I've just gone through like a whole thing. I'm gonna make this all about me. I've just gone through like a whole thing where I'm like stuck, like first person, third person, like what is, and does that mean that you haven't found the voice? Like, you know what I mean? Like how dictatorial is the voice? Are you ever stuck wondering, or have you ever changed back? I think I read that with Eileen.
Yes. Okay, I don't allow myself to get stuck wondering because that just makes me feel bad.
Yeah.
So what I say is, okay, I'll just do it this first way first. Okay. And if it ends up revealing to me within the next 20 minutes or 20 pages, whatever, that it needs to be different, I'll go back. So I practice writing a lot, and I think that's something that like maybe we forget that we can do.
True.
Maybe before everyone started writing, I mean, I write on my computer, but when I had a notebook, I remember there were a lot of false starts, cross things out, you know, and I knew that I was practicing.
Yeah.
And with the computer, it's almost like, oh no, everything is just automatically finished.
True.
You know? But I do practice writing a lot, especially when I'm approaching a new novel that I don't know how to write yet, which is every novel I write.
Yeah.
So I practice. I do things multiple ways. I'll even, like, you know, let's say for my year of rest and relaxation, like I would practice narrating Riva and what Riva would think on the bus home.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, just so that I could understand her, because I don't think that what's interesting about a book are like just the direct portrayals of things. It's always, storytelling is always more exciting when you're just getting the edge. But you can't understand what the edge looks like unless you understand whatever shape and form and mass that edge is of.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And that you understand it, not necessarily the reader, or like you don't necessarily have to explain it. I think
because it comes through.
Yeah.
You can just tell.
Yeah, I think Shirley Jackson edited her biographer, Ruth Franklin, told me that it was really telling in her edits how she'd take stuff out rather than put stuff in. She'd make it even more ambiguous, even more mysterious, like even more. So how, because I know you're, I believe you are, I don't know if you've started the process yet, but set to write the script for the McGlue
the script is done.
Oh, the script
has been done for so long. I just need money to make this movie.
If anyone can give us, with Andrew Haig still attached to direct, that's incredible. I forgot where I was going with this. I think we were.
What I can say is, like, when you, like, I really appreciate that I wrote McGlue as this pretty experimental novel.
Yes.
Because the way that it's using language and is kind of exactly what the novel is about. It's about somebody who's trying to think clearly, and therefore his language is twisted and deranged and kind of beautiful at times. But approaching an adaptation of like a feature film with McGlue's story, first of all, it's not in the first person, we might hear McGlue speaking, but I just thought, like, having him
like a voiceover.
voice over anything would just be ridiculous, and it actually be giving too much to the viewer. So that led to this kind of like refashioning of the whole story.
Right, a translation.
And, and there were other decisions, like they sail all over the world. I mean, that's like part of what was so fun about like following this journey. That it really feels exciting. Like they're going here and there and there.
It's a very active novel. It's just something you do so well. It's such an active novel, just like My Year of Rest and Relaxation, even though it's such a passive, so to speak, story in the sense that he's just like locked up in a, you know, he's passed out drunk in a bed for a really long, the majority of it, but you make it's so relentless and kind of exhausting in a way to read it. It's something that you do incredibly well. Has writing screenplays affected the way you write prose in any way?
I think so.
I wanted to ask you, because Lapvona was the first time you wrote in the third person, and I wonder if it had anything to do with screenplays or, I don't know, just the epic, like, cinematography of that novel.
100%. I think it was also, I wrote Lapvona. I was supposed to be, and I still am supposed to be writing a different book. That since I promised one book, I've written 1.5 other books.
Jesus.
But so this was like, Lapvona came to me during the pandemic. And the pandemic, already being someone who's like very into their mind, and naturally an isolator, I work by myself. The lockdown was on one level like blissful, like I didn't have to see anyone else, I didn't have to go anywhere.
Amen.
But then it was also absolutely horrific. And I recognized at that point that, like, as a writer, like, I can't live in a cabin alone in the woods yet. Like, maybe when I'm 90 and I have, like, 90 years of life to pull from, I was like, what is my life? Then Lapvona, it became very obvious, like, I need to be all of these people. I need to be a wide cast of characters, and I need to, as I construct this narrator, give that narrator the ability to be inside one character and then remembering something from 100 years ago and then watching another character and then inventing what another character might think. And that was so liberating. It was having come from first person, like, ride or die. The challenge was
to
really
your credit, that was very successfully achieved. The first, so very brave, I think, to suddenly try something out of your comfort zone.
Thanks.
Is there any other like thing, like tinge of screenplay that is like creeping into your novels or your writing, or maybe your process, or
I hope that my dialogue is getting better.
Your dialogue has always been, the therapy sessions in My Year of Rest of Relaxation
really
is like the best dialogue ever. But if you want to make it even better, okay.
Well, there's also the thing of, like, when you see that when you've moved from fiction writing, do you write screenplays?
I am on it, yeah.
Okay. Like, when I started writing screenplays, I saw, okay, when you are writing a scene, the people talk to each other, but what a coffee date isn't an hour-and-a-half long scene. You have to boil it down in a way that seems completely natural to the main plot points of their conversation.
Right. That is moving the plot forward in some way. yeah, what is really getting to me in screenplays is the blocking, and like the idea that you can have characters like sitting at that cafe and then going back to going to a bathroom and then coming back to the table at the cafe and then going to the street and then coming, like it's clumsy. Like you have to think of because the actors are going to be moving in that way, and it just makes sense to like make them go up and down. It's like, it's ugly.
But wait, why?
I don't know.
Is it important that they go to the bathroom?
No, but you know what? Well, I don't know. Sometimes like to make it a little like fun, or like to change them a little bit. Like now they're here, and now they're. But then it's like, no, but why would they go up the stairs and then down the stairs and then like it doesn't flow.
I see.
Like the rhythm, which is something I don't know anything about, because in a novel it's just like, I don't know, they just whatever.
I mean, it seems like what you want is
like the beats. You know what I mean?
You want continuity and variety. So if you're having like 17 scenes in the bathroom, and the bathroom is meaningless.
Yeah.
Like you might want to
change it up a little. Yeah, maybe, or not. Well, I'd be interested in that. You said in an interview once that at some point you discovered that more traditional prose forms were not limitations. You said plot and clarity were not the enemy. I'm curious to know at what point you did think that plot was the enemy or clarity was the enemy, and how that changed, and I don't know, just how you think about plot now in your writing, if at all.
I do. I love plot.
Wow.
But prior to 2011, I thought plot was synonymous with commercial nonsense.
Yeah.
I was like, plot is for Hollywood movies and television shows. And it's not a real thing. It's there to hypnotize you, suck you in, and then make you feel stuff, and then spit you out. And for some reason, even though I have always been obsessed with television and films, I thought, no, that's not art.
Right.
That's capitalism. And I'm glad that I went through. I had a very long phase of focusing on my writing as though, prose were poetry.
Right.
And that really helps, because I think when you do that for so long, and you say, okay, it doesn't matter what this is about, because it's certainly not content. It's more of a song than anything else. Yeah. You really practice a lot about writing
language
in so many different ways. You find a lot of different subtlety, and so that came really naturally to me.
So what changed your mind?
I was broke.
Yep. Got it.
I had finished graduate school and moved to Los Angeles, which is another story. And I was like, oh shit, sorry. Oh, dang it. I am really broke, and I'm in a new city and I don't know anyone, and I cannot find a job. It was really like the universe was conspiring for me to be broke. And I've always been so good at being self-reliant. Like, I started working in high school. All of a sudden, and here I had this new degree. Nobody wanted to hire me to do anything. So I was like, okay, what am I good at? I'm kind of good at writing, but I was a short story writer. Like, that was how I identified. It was like, that was my religion. I'll never do anything else. And I thought, okay, well, I had talked to some literary agents who had told me, like, yeah, your stories are kind of good, but no one's going to publish a collection of short stories until you've written a novel. So I said, I mean, this is all, very tricky, the way the world works. I said, okay, I need to write and publish a novel if I'm going to have a career as a short story writer. And I was like, oh, novels are so stupid. Let's plot this, plot that.
Character arc.
Anyone can do it. So I really leaned in and said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to give people exactly what they want. So I went out and I bought this book called The 90-Day Novel. And I followed the instructions. And it blew my mind. Because I had never thought about character, plot, pacing, like nothing. And it's not like this 90-day novel how-to self-help book actually taught me that, but it forced me to say, okay, yes, I recognize the novel is something, and it's not just a really long short story. It's this whole other animal. And so that's when I first wrote Eileen, and I totally fell in love with novel writing. Yeah.
Wow, incredible, and good for us as well. Just before I open up some questions for the public, I really want to ask you, is there, well, first of all, okay, two questions maybe. One, is there anything you're embarrassed or afraid to write about? And two, what does Brad Pitt smell like?
Okay, I'm gonna take number two first. He himself smells like nothing. But what he surrounds himself with smells like many nice things.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, he's an actor, right? So he really shouldn't have a distinct smell.
Really?
He should just be able to adapt himself to
odors?
this. Yeah.
Well, they're not really, they don't emanate from the screen, but I see what you mean. But I had heard that he smelled really good. I think it was Jennifer Lawrence's friend who attended the Oscars, and she met him, and she said, I don't know what perfume he was wearing. And actually, I think the anecdote ended with her asking him what the cologne was, and he said, I don't wear any.
It's just his natural pheromones.
Okay. And one, is there anything you're embarrassed or afraid to write about?
I mean, I'm probably afraid to write the things that have become way more personal to me. I mean, you know, it's like whenever I write about whenever I write about a mother, you know,
good save.
My own mother might wonder if this is a reflection of how I see her.
Yeah.
And therefore, you know, I'm currently married to a man named Luke. If I write about a husband, you know, but that's not to say that I'm embarrassed.
Okay.
It does make me a little bit anxious because, you know, as a writer, I'm sure this is true for you too, or I'm just going to assume it is, that like we have a lot of thoughts and judgments. A lot. Like we have to kind of like allow ourselves to think everything. And then our real opinions and feelings are the ones that like we keep returning to.
Yeah, I agreed. But yeah, I'm also like this close to writing about like my husband's family, but not really, but kind of. And like his mom may have murdered like a man and like buried him in the garden in the story, not in real life, I think.
Okay.
But you know,
no, that's fine.
Should I? Well,
yeah.
It's a small Spanish town in La Mancha. I'm giving too much away.
Can you change the name of the town?
I can change the name of the town. I'm not going to change the name of the woman. Because it's just too good a name. It's Carmen. Okay. I'm going to open it up for questions, even though I have so many here that I'm really envious of whoever gets to ask. Does anybody want to ask? Please don't. Okay, I see a hand there.
Hi, thanks so much for coming. I heard you say that you have Am I talking too loudly? Is it okay?
No, I just realized that you were speaking English and I didn't need the translation.
I'm from Rhode Island, actually. So.
Okay.
So I was wondering, you said you become the characters for Lapvona, for example. Is there an example of a character that's the most you that you've put in a book, who most resembles you as you are in real life?
I mean, I'd say I'm probably a mixture of characters, but if I had to pick one and stand by it, it would be Marek from Lapvona. I very deliberately modeled him after me in a very intimate way. I have always had spinal issues and have chronic pain, and I guess because, you know, it was locked down and I was just like very aware of myself, I was asking myself, like, why haven't I ever written about like someone with pain or a deformity, which I have experienced? And then it was really revealing, because the more I wrote about Marek, the more I realized things about myself, like, and since have tried to become different, because I don't like being imperfect. But you know, his spiritual arrogance, for example, how quick he is to abandon others. I mean, all that kind of stuff. That was really uncomfortable.
That's so funny. I would have thought you'd said, I think it was Lisbeth. Was it Lisbeth?
Oh, Lisbeth, yeah.
And Lapvona? 'Cause she's, I don't know.
Lisbeth is
really
like,
cool.
was like the person I wished I could be.
I see.
You know, someone with no needs.
She was like, fuck everyone.
She was like, yes. And she had lost her only love, so she had nothing to lose.
Yeah. And one of my favorite scenes ever in any of your books, which was when she has to give him, the king, really bad news, and she's crying and she has to dance.
Yeah.
And he makes her dance. Anyway, out of context, it's not as funny, but it was really funny. Does anybody else want to ask her anything? Okay, we have a few here. We have some people in the back.
Hi. Really interesting talk. This is kind of similar to the last question Virginia asked, not the one about Brad Pitt. Just when you're kind of writing, I mean, I'm a younger writer, and it's kind of a cliche that like it's easier to write about what actually happened in your life than to create fiction, and that kind of line between fiction and lived experience. Do you ever feel that sort of temptation to just write what happens in your life, or do you always feel like you're drawn to sort of things that are separate to you, I guess, as separate as, you know, a novel can be from yourself?
I know this isn't what you're asking, but I have written personal essays, and those are always very challenging, because I see how trite my truth is when I know exactly what it is.
Why does it feel trite? Why does it feel trite?
Oh, because I already know it. Like, I'm not discovering anything new. It's not revealing anything new to me. I'm just kind of confessing something. I mean, actually really like writing nonfiction. But I'm not like hanging on to anything I really need to write about right now. Kind of written about everything in my life that I would want to. Yeah. But in my fiction, I feel like, this is what an obsessive writer I am. Like, I actually think that my life really is the writing. And this person who's like moving around and like, hello, like that's just, that's like my avatar in a way. But that person is just there to collect, sounds so crazy, but like to collect from the world the information, experiences, skills, set of feelings necessary for the writer.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
There's another one right there.
Thank you for being here.
Hi.
Hi. I'm curious about what are your favorite Spanish-speaking writers, if you have any, besides Virginia, of course.
Oh no, that's not right.
I haven't read your novel.
I know.
But you wrote it in English.
It's okay.
So how
But
could you?
You are Spanish-speaking in any way.
Yeah. I really this is my least favorite kind of question, because as soon as someone asks me what is your favorite blank kind of book, I have 0 books. I have read 0 books. I cannot come up with a single title. Do you have a different question that might be?
No, it's okay. Well, what are your favorite writers?
My favorite writers.
No.
I mean, I do have some, like the writers that I still think of are the writers that I read when I was very, very young. Now, as an adult and as a novelist, when I read things, I kind of need to, like, forget them, because I don't want... I mean, yes, reading other amazing writers is inspiring for sure, but I don't want any of their ideas kind of getting into my head. So my favorite writers are the writers I read when I was like 9. James Baldwin, Ralph Ellison, basically Black American writers from the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, I think that was the most bold and most beautiful storytelling that came out of America up until that point.
That's interesting. Thank you.
So you don't have like writer's envy?
Oh, I do.
With like recent or like contemporary.
Oh no, I don't get envious.
Don't say like Shakespeare. You know what I mean? Like
No, I don't get envious of other writers being so great. I'm like happy when somebody's
sure.
great, because it means that there's greatness on this planet.
Sure.
But what my envy is, I'm like, oh, they wrote this and I'm not writing right now.
right.
So I should really be writing.
That's healthy. We had a question over there in the back. Hay una pregunta.
Going back to when you said that plot was the enemy and prose was your friend, I just wanted to know how you felt like your writing style changed when you started working with the traditional elements of novels, and how difficult it was for you to adapt your writing style to the more formal elements, or if it didn't affect it at all, or what happened with your writing style when you started writing novels.
It's interesting. Thanks for the question. Because on one level, I feel like my writing got a lot less personal. Because I wasn't just like listening to whatever was happening inside of me. I was actually tracking a narrative that I was hoping to find interesting. And then on another level, I think it actually got much more honest. Because not knowing how to, describe a character's, mood, or what it was like for them to look out the window. Like, I would have to really imagine it for myself, and know that it needed to be accurate, like not just some idea. I realized that I really love plot, to the point where like I wrote basically like a suspense novel. I was like interested in what you can do to story to manipulate people. And by the time I wrote Lapvona, which came out like a couple years ago, I I think at that point I had kind of just taken myself off the hook, which had been the hook that I had hung myself by for so many years. That was, you have to write well. Like, I just don't worry about writing well. Like, maybe my writing will suck, but I'm totally okay with that, because what I'm interested in now is writing a good story. So, I mean, hopefully all the practice I did will still make my writing good, but I'm really moving into story in a new way in this next project I'm working on. And also, like, deliberately trying to defy some of my pre-existing quote-unquote rules, which were really judgments that I held for myself in my own writing, like writing too much. Like, I'm trying to write too much now. It's very interesting.
So you talked about transitioning from writing short stories to novels. How do you feel about writing short stories now? Do you enjoy it as much as you did?
I've written just a few short stories since I finished my collection, and they're pretty heartbreaking for me. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe because I know I've left that form. They require a different part of myself, and I'm almost like afraid. Like, I'm scared to go back to them, but knowing that I will write more short stories. I think I just need like 10 years, something like that.
Okay.
Oh.
Hi, Tess. Thank you very much for coming. It's been lovely to hear thoughts. I think after I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, I felt very much like it was obviously a very unique novel. And until I moved to Madrid, and a friend gave me Leaving the Otessa Station by Ben Lerner. I'm not sure if you've read it or not.
I have.
Yeah, I think, I suppose my question is whether, you see any similarities with that book, in that, both, as far as I see, they're both books about fairly listless protagonists, if you can call them that, who, in a way, dull their lives through sleep or drug use, and both books kind of, end with a horrific terrorist attack.
Yeah, that's true. Are you trying to suggest that I ripped off Ben Lerner, though?
I think your book is better.
I was just thinking of that when I got to Madrid today. I was thinking of that book. I think what that book does so well, and this is something I don't know Ben Lerner very well. I've met him several times. He's a fantastic writer. But what I always want to ask him is, like, when you were writing Leaving the Otessa Station, were you being sincere, or were you knowingly and with effort writing a satire of a hyper-intellectual poet? I'm not sure. Like, if he just got lucky and it turned out that when he takes himself seriously, it's hilarious, I would kind of want to know that.
If you ever find out the answer, I'd love to hear.
Okay, I'll send you a letter.
I'd love that, thank you.
Hello. Hello, here. Do you believe that short stories are underrated because consumers ask for because you have talked about capitalism, and I was wondering if you believe that writers have a pressure to write novels because they sell kind of more than short stories. And I was wondering if you believe it's something like that or it's completely different.
That's an interesting question. I mean, things are also shifting because we're in the era of intellectual property. So in some ways, a short story might be just as valuable as a novel for the film and television industry, and actually even more valuable to them because they could probably get the short story for cheaper. I think what people think is that if you go into a bookstore and you pick up a novel and you read the back of it and it's like, oh, this sounds really good, I would totally read this, then you'll maybe buy the book, go home and read it. But if you go into a bookstore and you pick up a short story collection by someone you've never heard of, you're like, well, there's no guarantee these are all good. I'm not just instantly interested in them, unless you're like what I would do, just like start reading them in the bookstore. But I think the assumption in the market is that when your name is identifiable, then people will know that they might like your short stories. So I think that's why the novel often comes first for publishing.
Okay, so it means that right now you have no excuses to not write short stories.
I mean, I have a million excuses.
Well, the sadness that she mentioned earlier, no? The sadness that you mentioned.
The what?
The sadness that you mentioned earlier.
The
about
sadness?
Going back to the short story.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, mostly it's like I have 2 unfinished novels.
That's a lot.
And that's so uncomfortable, you know?
You're doing simultaneous or?
No.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Like breaks and then get into one. Anyone else?
Hi, Otessa. I want to ask you here, how do you write physically? Like, what do you do? What do you drink? What do you...
Having like a beverage is very distracting. But I find I do my best writing when I have to urinate because there's a sense of urgency. So I would drink a lot of, I mean, if you wanted to try this out, drink a lot of water, lay down in bed, put the covers over you so it's hard to get out of the bed, get your laptop, and then start writing. And as soon as you feel the urge to urinate, that's when your writing is going to get good.
Thank you.
Are you... Anybody else? No? No, but wait, one second. Has an editor or maybe like a producer ever asked you to like tone it down? Do you allow yourself to be edited at all?
I'm really lucky. All of my editors are amazing.
Oh, fuck you.
But I did have an experience once with a short story that I had submitted to a journal through an old teacher of mine. And it was badly titled, that I knew for sure, but the story itself I knew was good because it's exactly what I meant to do, therefore I believed in it. And this guy forwarded me the letter that he'd received from his editor about why my story wasn't good enough. And it was like so preposterous that I like kind of promised myself that I would never listen to an editor's criticism ever again unless they were like pointing out that their socks were purple on page 31 and then they were green. That was an accident. Yeah, I think it's just toning it down. Maybe that's like it's a money issue, right? I mean, like, oh no, you don't want to alienate too many people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we want the reader to feel, right, alienated or...
I'm kind of like happy to be the example. Like, readers like being alienated sometimes. Actually, they identify with the feeling of alienation.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe it's not a bad thing.
Not if you do it, Otessa. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you so much for listening and for coming. I believe Otessa will be signing books.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's not over there. She'll be signing.
Vamos a movernos rápido la fila para que